So, hello everyone, thank you for coming. I'm here before you as an individual who is, how to say, quite disappointed with the way technology has evolved or not evolved, and the way it's designed, and the way we use it, especially our personal devices like our phones that mostly everybody has. And what I'm here to share with you very happily and without any shoes on is 4 strategies that I use in my own work and the way I do my own work, which are play it, wear it, touch it, and share it. So let's get to it. I was born in Lisbon. I'm a Portuguese person. Actually, Tiago is a very Portuguese name. Back in Portugal, I studied computer science or computer engineering. So I was trained originally as an engineer. As a person who is concerned with how computers work inside, very much, and how to optimize their function. Now, at some point, to be more or less precise, 8 years ago, I moved to Linz, to Austria, to start a PhD and to start teaching also eventually at the Interface Culture Department in an art university. Now, there was a shift there in my head. A shift that prompted me to pay more attention and to become actually quite concerned on the way that people use computers for doing some work, but also to communicate with each other and to entertain themselves. And now this shift started 10 years ago when I was finishing my computer engineering degree. I worked as a research assistant in a project called InStory, and I'm going to talk about something which probably nowadays is kind of pointless because that's what our phones do, but back then this was pretty neat. People would have this device that you see there. It was called a PDA. It's not that far from our phones nowadays, our smartphones, except that back then it was much slower, much harder to program for also, and almost nobody had one of these things. So the point of the project would be this. A visitor to a cultural heritage space, a location which is very interesting and very rich, which you can see on the picture, would be given this device, and this device would track their location within this physical space. And depending on their location, it would send people, it would show the visitor information, additional information that's not visible or accessible in the physical space. Now, also something which motivates me very much, this was also concerned with interactive narratives, interactive stories in real space. And the way you lived through this story, the way you interacted with the story, was basically by moving, which is something you do very naturally. Now, the downside of this that made me a bit disappointed at the result was that people, by the way the technology was designed, were still forced at some point to look down on the device. And so people found themselves in this very rich space, very immersive, surrounded by nature and all these amazing constructions. And yet, even if for a brief moment, they would have to log off, let's say, log off of reality and look at the screen of the device. That was 10 years ago, and I thought, well, technology will get better someday, and things will be different, right? Right. That's where we are at now. So these devices have been born 30 years ago as computers, as room-sized computers. They start getting smaller until they fit in our pocket, but they are still computers. They're still machines. They're still calculators. Even though nowadays a big part of our social life goes through these things. And how does it go through these things? It requires us to look down at the screen like they are doing. For instance, here at TED, we have back there, you can look back there, the social media guys. Hi, social media guys. They are the social media guys, and what are they doing? They're sitting on a computer. Guys, this talk is for you, okay? Near future, be brighter. So, how amazing is it that we absorb these things into our personal life, and sometimes we start bending our habits and being constrained by the way technology is designed, or at the lack of a better word, Sometimes it's not design, it's what they want us to buy, but okay. So these things are part of our social relations, our love life. When we lose them, we're like, oh my God, I had those pictures and those messages and those emails. Oops, this is gonna be horrible thinking of someone doing something with my phone. But okay. What I wish for, or what I'm aiming for, with the 4 strategies I'm going to present, is not to have ourselves constrained by technology, because technology can be used for nice things, and it gives us, let's say, superpowers, but it has to be designed not to constrain us to be navigating in menus and looking in screens and punching in keys, which are not even real keys anymore, but rather to make use of our body and to make use of what we are already as human beings, our creativity, our way of being in the world. So, first strategy I call play. Now, we as humans are playful, even in the way that we like to, take objects and play with our belly buttons and our fingers and play with the pen, all this stuff. We do this very naturally. You should take advantage of it. Now, when I say play it, or when I said play it the first time, I think many of you started thinking about games, which is quite natural. Digital media nowadays is full of games. And it seems to me that also that some corporations, let's say, identify that games are very engaging. So they turn their products into games, or they make games that are tied with their products so that they will engage you. Now, games are engaging, and of course, this is not the only thing that we can do with games. Let's say trick people to spend their money. And when I say play, I'm not just saying games. You cannot just think about games. We have to think about play in general. For instance, kites. I think that using technology should be much more like this. Why? Well, for many reasons. For starters, you're not sitting like this. You are paying attention to the world, and you are using bodily faculties, and of course, your perception of the world itself in interacting with something. So, to say, it's not this that I want to achieve, which is what we have nowadays a lot. Taking something, let's say, you are going somewhere, now you check in somewhere, what do you do? And you get a badge. Good for you. Those are my badges, by the way. I have badges also. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is more like this. I think technology should be more like this. Of course, it's computers. They're supposed to be mathematical and precise. But in the outward behavior and the way we use them, and in the depth, in the broadness of interactions we can have through them and with them, they should be much more like this. There is a lot you can learn from play and from games, especially about, let's say, community management, how communities are formed, and how people create together and share their creativity. I think that starting with play would be very good, as an environment which is not so serious, let's say, as healthcare or politics, but then we could take the lessons we learned from play and apply them to, I don't know, how to make new types of government, because certainly we need that very much right now. Now, this whole involvement of the body, of our senses, of our way of being in the world, brings us to the next strategy, which I call touch it. Computers are very abstract things, aren't they? Now, you look at an abacus, and you know how the abacus works. And if you're a kid, maybe you look at an abacus and you don't care what is it for, you just start playing around with it. This is actually true. I've done this when I was a kid. So have many other people. Computers, unfortunately, are made like black boxes. You need a degree to work with them. You need a degree to know how they work. And certainly they were not made or the people who started making computers, let's say, they did not have in mind what we were doing with them now, sharing our feelings and our emotions and communicating with other people. Now, what if our mobile devices, for instance, or phones, let's say, were not only used to send bits and bytes of text and pixel pictures and videos and tweets, but they could also send, for instance, your breath, your heartbeat, or other senses of touch, or the temperature of your body. That would make a bit more sense as we use them right now as affectional or as emotional devices also, as emotional channels between people. Also, if the devices themselves had some kind of behavior, that they were not just an inert brick with a screen on it, but they will also breathe and change their shape to let you know of something that's going on in the digital world or the physical world. But why stop with the phones? When we have the world around us that's full of objects we could use for play, for information, or for telling stories, such as in this project, which is one of my first, in which we used real objects and old objects to tell stories, as people would pick up these objects and hold them and use them and make gestures with them. The story would be told in parts from the memories, fictional memories of these objects. Curiously enough, this project was using a wearable interface. That's kind of glove you see there, but I will get to that soon. Objects, but also the rest of the world. So can walls tell a story. So we used walls also, the memories, fictional memories, of walls to tell a story. And instead, of course, of using a brick with a screen on it, we came up with this device that resembles a bit a stethoscope, so that people would look at the device and more or less know already what to do with it. Now, these things would have to be carried with us at all times, like our phones are. So why not wear them? Why not turn them a bit into what clothes are already? This is what's being done in any case. In some subcultures, people take their phones and they put stuff on them so that it acts a bit more like jewelry. And of course, your mobile phone, to a certain extent, is like your clothes. It's used to communicate with other people, so are clothes, but it's also used as a kind of piece of jewelry. Now, clothes are also personal, like phones, like our devices. They are also used to communicate in several ways. To communicate your rank, let's say, or you power dress to go to your job, or you dress nicely to an interview, or you wear shoes for a TEDx presentation. Also, you can be very playful about the way you wear our clothes, such as disguising yourself as a fictional character for a day in order to, let's say, change your perception of the world. Now, of course, we already have some wearable devices. Here's one. This one, you wear it on your wrist, and it measures the amount of exercise you make, and it turns the whole thing into a game. Here we go again with the badges and the points. But okay. This is a bracelet. Now, what if we start using other things instead of bracelets? Instead of just measuring your performance, your clothes can be like kind of magical power, like a spider sense. What these do, for instance, is they would alert you, they would vibrate or buzz in very well-selected places in your body when you're being scanned for RFID tags, which happens very frequently when you go shopping. So clothes are kind of intimate, and they provide some feedback to you that nobody else is aware of. They could also exhibit behavior. So for instance, what happens with this Titan hat is that in the presence of a certain spectrum of radio waves, it ruffles its feathers, much like a bird. And this is something that's stylish for yourself, but it's also a warning of danger, a warning which is mimicking a natural process, and of course is seen by everyone around you. Now, folklore is full of magical devices and things such as 7-mile boots. And there is also a project called 7-mile boots, by sheer coincidence. And what these boots do is that as you walk around in the real world, in the physical world, you're also walking around in the digital world. And this thing will be playing back conversations that are happening in the digital world. Now, this is something we need more. We need more devices which are both in the physical and the digital, because we bridge these things together in the way we use our technology. There is no separation of, so much like being in the Matrix and all this virtual reality. No, these worlds are together. We are bringing them together, but we need better tools, better devices, better clothes to bring them together. This is one of my babies. It's called Rambler, and it's a pair of sneakers that posts your every step on Twitter. Your every step. Now, of course, this was a very humorous take upon the phenomenon of microblogging, but what it's also, in similarity with the 7-mile boots there, is something that lets you interact both with the physical world and with the digital world through something you do naturally, not by going on the screen or sitting down for typing or all this stuff. You just walk, and that's it. Social networks. The amount of stuff we post on social networks is amazing, isn't it? Guys in the back. Anyway, share it is the fourth and final strategy. besides all the stuff that we share on the social networks, I believe that, well, it's a pretty solid belief, computers have no imagination. They do not have creativity. They need someone to program them. People together, when they come together, and when they are presented with an object or some kind of system to play around with, oh, they're very creative. The thing is, within these environments, these open environments, really creative things happen and new ideas come to life. But for these new ideas to actually be beneficial for, let's say, the whole humanity, they have to be shared. And of course, in the same light, our devices and our systems should be designed so that we can share these ideas with people who need them. Even when technology constrains us by forcing us to write pieces of text in predetermined characters, people can come together and share the way they use those systems to make funny faces like a teddy bear and all this really nice stuff. For instance, this is called emoji or kawamoji, and it's an example of how people can be creative even when technology constrains them. But this creativity, the results of it must be shared, they should be shared, so that other people can pick the same results, can modify them, can adapt them to different paradigms, different locations, whatever, different contexts, and benefit from them. When we come together also to play, still on the topic of sharing, play is inherently social. So when we come together to play a game, or to watch a play, or to play something, we are creating communities that last at least during the game, but they can also stay after the game on shared interests that are related to the game or to something else. In any case, if we conceive of a world where technology is more out there, it's more out in the physical world and less on the screen, I believe that we can stage play, not to say just games, at the city level, at a bigger level, where people come outside and meet each other and use their body and use their perception and begin to care more about the public spaces and the place they live in through these games and after these games, and maybe for making new games or new projects in the future. So all these things have to be shared. In conclusion, I imagine a future, I imagine a near future, where we are not divided in mind and body, in digital and physical, where we're not stuck in a matrix, where we are not using devices that force us to think like them, discontinuously navigating menus, making predetermined choices. That's not the future I imagine. I imagine a future where technology puts wings on our imagination, where it empowers us to do new things, to see the world in a new light, to care about things, to discover new things, not to be abstracted from what exists, to look at the screen, even if it's little or big or huge like that one. So we have to be more like this. We have to be more playfully or critically playful with the way we use technology, and have devices, instead of being bricks with screens on it, to be more like a sword, a magical sword of our imagination. Thank you very much.